Wait. Okay. Audio's coming through. I'm turning up the volume. Turning up the volume some more. Doesn't seem to be doing anything. All right. Test. All right. Test. Okay. Say play. Okay, let's do this one first. Alright, career profile. No. Wait, yes, replays, import. JF8AZ3Q. Okay. Q. Where's my mouse? Fuck, I lost my mouse. Oh no. Oh. No, really, where the fuck is my mouse? Oh, hey, it's Knock. Okay, there we go. Because the thing showed up, it latched me onto that. Got it. Alright. I can see chat. I see everything going on. Okay, so we are watching Grayson.
Just what I needed.
Let's see how this goes.
Attackers going on the attack. Hello. I can't wait to get into the fight.
Okay, so it's a comp match, which is a good start. Let's see. When you get a chance. Okay, so he suspects, at the very least, strong suspicion, let's say, that the enemy Hanzo is smurfing. So nobody's Hanzo yet, but there is one DPS that's not filled in. So let's just see how this goes. This is my first review, actually, in a little while. And yeah, let's see how it goes. See what everything looks like.
5, 4, 3, 2.
Nice sprays. Really asserting your dominance. Nice pick. Nice pick. Okay. So the first thing that I would say is that he was in your peripheral and you were not behind your shit. Which doesn't matter yet because we don't know what the trends are. Okay, so this is actually a few people. Oh, you guys are in a 5-stack actually. Alright, now I'm looking at the names. Getting back into it. Alright. Lunar Grayson, Knock, Boop, Hetero. I don't know if used Bugatti is one of you guys. So you could be in a 6-stack for all I know. Hanzo gets 3 picks. You swap to McCree. Which, to be fair, I don't exactly know why you swapped to McCree here, because Widow is still going to be really strong on first point Junkertown. I assume it's because there's something specific you want to do, or maybe somebody called something out. But especially on this first point right here, like these wide open sight lines and that long rotation that you could be making to this top area up here is going to be really good for Widow. And as McCree, you're just going to have to close too much different distance to get real value. I think the benefit of what's going to wind up happening is that your team's not going to really get a good regroup until the cart's maybe about halfway pushed. But If you start pushing before then you're putting yourself in a situation where they're going to break your shield before you can break theirs, because they have Hanzo Zen, and they can just dish out more damage between those two characters alone. But I think the engagement is going to be important, how you decide to actually roadmap to get to the point. Just because, like I said, you have this big open space, and McCree isn't somebody who really likes this long sight line. He likes those medium to short ranges where his fall off hasn't actually started yet. So I actually want to pay attention to your pathing here and what you decide to do, especially since you're playing in 5. So Reaper TP's up top, get to pick, you're half, Ryan's already dropping. So this is going to be a bad engage just to start because you're already split attention, and your Ryan's going to be kind of abandoned. Alright, so focus fire at this point has been lost. You get picked by the Zen, so since we're focusing specifically on you, let's see what happens here.
Join me.
Okay, so you get hit super hard. Not a bad pick. A little bit of a late reaction there. You could have saved your Ashe. But I mean, it happens. Okay, and this is what we're talking about, where you have this long sight line where you, even when you hit your shots, they're not very threatening. Like, that Sun doesn't have to be scared, because even if you hit headshots, you're only hitting, like, you have to hit, like, 3 headshots in order to finish them. And your team is so split because your Ryan dropped when the Reaper was still up there. So that's a miscommunication on team part, but on your part, I would say slow reaction time to the Ashe, and then just poor hero swap for the section. I think you could have maybe redeemed that if you had gone Widow. Just getting some picks would have alleviated pressure off of your Diva. But I think your tanks really just kind of fall apart there in terms of cohesion with each other and with the supports, and that's really what leaves you so out in the open to get picked. Another good shot by the Hanzo.
It ain't my time.
Okay, he pushes the tempo. So this is what I'm really looking at in terms of the Hanzo himself. Is there's a lot of things that come into factor when you're considering player skill, and one of them is the fact that, you know, there's some players who have high mechanical skill and some players who have high game sense. So it's possible that this Hanzo is somebody who's been stuck in his rank, maybe because he one-tricks Hanzo, maybe because, you know, he has that high mechanical skill and not get any game sense, or maybe because he has the game sense and not any real mechanical skill. This could just be a good day for him. But there's a lot of instances where smurfing is kind of like mislabeled, because I should really figure out how to shut world chat off. Is mislabeled because there's such a lopsided kind of like skew of skill. And then, you know, like the person, I saw the message popped up, and no, I don't want to continue my argument. I think the message should have popped on stream too, because I should be streaming my whole screen. Jesus Christ. But he said the Hanzo was level 30, so I guess in that instance he probably is smurfing, because there's no way you'll be level 30 first 30 levels in your plat game, you know, because that's what this is. This is like mid to high plat, I'm pretty sure. But I still think there's things you could have done to probably nullify him, or at least stop the push so far, even if he is smurfing. Which sucks. I mean, but like I was saying, there's some things that are lopsided, and then either somebody starts popping off, or like certain games highlight player skills. Like, if you play with a very passive tank and you have a Hanzo, then all the Hanzo needs to do is hit shots. He doesn't need to worry about his game sense as much, because the Ryan's going to protect him, let's say. So in those instances, there are some games where somebody can be labeled as smurfing without actually smurfing, just because it's a game that just lets their skills shine. But let's look at this a few times, because there's, in that instance, there was like 3 people who came up behind. Alright, so let's spectate overlay.
The payload has reached the chip.
really want to try to be as present as we can. And this, okay, so this is the other thing with Junkertown, and McCree specifically, is that the sightlines on second are kind of favorable-ish to McCree. They're short enough that you don't really have to worry about closing big distances without cover or anything like that. This big curve here and this high ground is going to make it so that you could traverse around the map fairly safely, even if there is a lot of physical space. But the problem is that first and second point have a lot of physical space without a lot of cover. So you can go up top onto this wheel up here and get a lot of value simply by being able to rotate throughout the whole of the point. But you can see here, you're like super far forward. And I mean, you're not far forward in terms of like McCree himself. If you're playing McCree in this context, you're at a decent range where you can do damage, but you're spaced far enough so that you're not like taking cleave damage that your tanks might be taking, or you know, like you're taking advantage of the aggro that your tanks are taking. Like this is good spacing for McCree. It's just McCree isn't great on this map specifically because teams that will flank and take advantage of long sightline characters are gonna automatically have an advantage over you, and you're gonna be basically fighting up. So here you're able to get decent damage because you're in a good sightline and a good range, but there's a lot of areas that you can't watch because you're too far forward because the map is so big, right? So we could already see that this Rhine and this Reaper are gonna come from up top, and really your Ashe should be taking advantage of not just the high ground. You should both be taking advantage of the high ground, which we'll talk about that in a second. But your Ashe should be playing a little bit farther back so that she could watch the sight lines. I don't know if you're stacking with this person, so you can't really depend on them. You also shouldn't be depending on anybody to do things that you could very easily be doing. So you could very well still be playing Widow and still be playing way, way back here or something like that and be able to watch all the sight lines for your teams. But you really have no anti-flank right now or anything like that. And you're really just playing kind of like a disadvantage here, like I was talking about before. So let's just go into the high ground thing really quick, right? So there's a few ways to get up onto the high grounds. Most of them, if you're using the stairs, are fairly slow. This one right here requires you to walk towards the enemy team. The one back there requires you to make a huge rotation back. And then there's this one right here, which is still fairly slow. And it doesn't this isn't exactly where you would want to be, right? You would have to then go all the way over here. Like, it doesn't matter. You still have to make a super slow rotation. The fastest way that you can get up here is using these little things. I'm sure you know specifically because you also spend a lot of time kind of like learning Overwatch and stuff like that. This one back here has always been easier for me. I always kind of forget how this one works a little bit. If it works at all, actually. But I do know that you can hop onto either this leg or this leg, and then continue to just jump up while lightly pressing forward, and you should be able to make it up this device right here. For this one, I can tell you more specifically, you hop onto the outer tread, and then once you get under this electrical socket, you're going to just jump up, and you should land right on it, and then you can crouch walk onto the top and jump up onto the slope area to then gain access to the rest of this rotating high grounds. But this is going to let you, you know, check your sight lines, the sight lines that are significant, especially since they're playing a Reaper. You should already be wary of flankers because that's one of the easiest Reaper playstyles is that you go on the flank, you have big shotguns, you roll the tanks, and you walk out with Wraith. So you should really already be checking that. I don't know what to say about this nanoed Reinhardt in your back. Like, that's not something you can really mentally prepare for, I don't think, on a day-to-day basis. But it's something that you should just watch out for people flanking in general if you can. I mean, if the Reinhardt's not up front, he's either dead or behind you, I guess, is the real thing right there. That's what they used to say when, for old Vancouver. Sideshow used to say for Overwatch League, he would say, like, if you don't see the Reinhardt in front of you shielding his team, when it comes to bumper, you have to assume he's just behind you somewhere ready to shatter you or hiding in a flank because he did it so often, right? So that's kind of like a line of thought that I use a lot of times when it comes to certain characters. If you know the Reinhardt's not dead or didn't die recently, and he's not in front of his team shielding, you should probably be looking for him. If you know that the person who has to be in a specific spot all the time isn't there, then you should be thinking, well, where are they? Because they might be doing something that might be more valuable to the team, or they might be doing something just disruptive in general. So If you're able to check those sight lines, it's better, especially because you know that they have a Reaper, so it'd be really good to be up there. But you're not, and they kind of get the drop on you because they're able to just push up the stairs because your tanks have to push back, and due to that, this fight is just gonna collapse as a whole. But then it's gonna happen again here, and this is what I'm really looking at in terms of just either awareness and or audio. Audio is always something that I am a little precarious about, like, harping on, because not everybody can have good audio setups. But if you can manage to, you know, get good balance where you can hear the game well, Reaper has, fairly heavy footsteps. And although you react well to this, you should have heard him coming. Maybe you did, and you were just waiting for him to use his ult. I mean, it's a lost fight either way, so the Ana dying is really only going to set your team respawn timer back. But you're still going to have to retreat and give that space regardless. I'm going to assume... Yeah, okay, you knew the Reaper was there. I'm going to assume that Ashe is not with you guys, because I don't think that if they were playing with you in a 6-stack that they would take that positioning. You guys are too high ranked to be, like, and too used to communication for that to be something that you're actively doing. Like, that positioning is just way too dangerous if you get pushed out. And you see the Ashe already took so much damage trying to get back to her team. We were 5-stacking. Cool. You can message in chat, by the way. I've gotten myself a little bit more set up. I don't know if that's just inconvenient for you, but either way. So largely what I would say to that Death of the Hanzo is that it would have been good for you to already be up there so that he couldn't push that space. I think it can be the responsibility of really anybody. I would prefer for, like, my own style that the supports don't have this responsibility. And I think that the main tank definitely can't have this responsibility. But somebody's responsibility should always be to clear the high grounds. And I think that the DPS and the off tanks are the optimal positions to really be doing that. Because they, one, usually have the movement abilities or the free space to do so, and two, having the high ground usually benefits those positions the most, right? The main tank doesn't want to be up there unless the whole team is up there. The main tank has to, you know, really make sure that they're controlling the right type of space. So making sure that at the very least you're keeping that high ground clear is good. I like this decision to double back because I saw you wanted to flank. You wanted the big fat high uni. But you weren't going to make it in time. Your team might have not held if you don't get these picks. Good pick. I would say that you're idling here a little bit too much. I think that adding to the bulk of your team and adding to kind of like the shield presence is good, because when you're playing behind Reinhardt, you're really adding to the shield presence as a whole, because the team can't push into the enemy team can't push into your Reinhardt as easily. But what I would say is that I think there's a larger benefit that you can get from Tracer by setting up flanks earlier, by taking these off angles earlier, and I'm just going to keep harping on it because I could see the Hanzo through the wall up there already, clearing that high ground. It's just this. I think those things can garner a little bit more value. I would have preferred you to blink into the mini. Health pack control is important as Tracer. Probably like the third or fourth most important thing, if not higher. I really don't want to say fourth. I really want to say third or second most important thing. So as much as this Hanzo might be smurfing, you're also letting him run free. I understand if you've kind of like, he's killed you a few times, but you haven't actually lost a straight up duel yet. And I do know from personal experience with you that you are able to kind of play up against certain people because your mechanical skills are your strong suit. So I would like to see you putting a little bit more pressure on the hard carry of the enemy team, since you have kind of like usually the best mechanical skill in the lobby. So if he is your biggest threat, then you need to be trying to take care of that a little bit better. He's able to take shots for a while, without, like, you could have just gone up those stairs, blinked across, and then, you know, unless he hits the headshot, you still have recall. And I think that's at least a duel you can try to take once, see if he hits the shot. If he hits the shot, then I can understand you trying to maybe focus his team a little bit more. But you haven't taken like an effective duel yet. Ooh. That was close. I think that you could have entered that fight from a little bit of a better angle. Let's go look back at it really quick. Here's your first Jeff. We're actually going to watch this from ahead so that we can see what angles you could have come through at. Because the first thing that I will say is that the pulse onto the Zarya was ill-advised. I gets out her bubble, but she gets 40 charged off of that. So I think that's pretty good for it's a pretty good trade for her. It could have been that you thought her personal bubble was down, but there was no reason for you to really think that unless somebody miscalled it. So I just think that was an ill-advised pulse, especially when, you know, they used trance a fight or two ago. So they definitely can't trance out of that. And, you know, it's easy to kind of just even stick the ground next to Zen and then get that free pick. And then all you have to worry about is killing Niana afterwards, and you've eliminated their backline entirely. I think that's one of the biggest benefits of Pulse, is that it's an easy kind of like, it'll get you an easy pick if you use it in the right space against the right targets. But it's not so strong that you can get team wipes as if it was, you know, like a High Noon or a Dragon Blade or a you know, Grav Dragon combo. I mean, you can use Grav Pulse, but it's not going to be the same effect. So using it to make sure that you're eliminating resources can be good. Like, you get rid of that Zarya bubble or you get rid of the Zarya, but using it to be able to just straight out take out weak targets or easy to target targets can be better. So this is, I think, the angle that I would have been preferential for you to go out on, is to go one more room deep and be back here. The reason is because you have recall. There's the health pack here, and if you get into this fight and you don't like it and you recall, you're pretty much going to recall on top of this health pack. And you're one blink to being, you know, back out of that support line of sight, you know? I think it can be difficult to play from here if the enemies all realize and decide to force you out, and they can kind of like wrap around and kind of trap you in there. I don't expect that level of cohesion, but I think that if it happens, it's still something that you can escape as long as you manage your blinks and recalls properly, right? You don't want to be over blinking so that, you know, you're just blinking to blink or blinking to stay out of the enemy LOS. You can kind of like blink and then pace yourself for a second depending on how many shots are being hit. It's a little bit hard, I think, to explain sometimes when it comes to Tracer, but you don't need to just try to dodge every shot, because I don't think you're at that point where they're going to be hitting every shot. If you were playing against, you know, like maybe Diamonds or Masters or even Grandmasters, then I would start saying like, okay, I could see why you would want to just be blinking as frequently as possible, even if you haven't taken any damage yet. But even still, I would expect the Tracer to be playing, you know, as equal levels. I think you can just pace out your blinks a little bit better and then recall and then still have blinks to escape from that situation, especially if you're recalling onto a health pack or something like that. You actually don't even have to recall into the health pack necessarily. If you wanted to, you could blink out once and then blink back twice to the health pack to save your recall, and then just chill there for a second until you get your blinks back. If they push you, then you have recall. If they don't push you, then you get blinks back and you go again. But you could also apply pressure from this like distance. You can apply pressure from this distance, like a decent amount of pressure, because of Tracer's new kind of like fall off range. So when you do this pulse, it's a good stick. But like I said, you don't see your bubble come out, bubble comes out. You can't even finish her off of it immediately. And then you retarget to low health then, good finish. Reinhardts are always almost always going to try to fire strike after you've recalled, because they don't have a lot of options. Like, it's just the only thing they can do. So just try to be aware that if you've just recently recalled, and the Reinhardt's like looking at you, he's already in that fire strike animation. You can pretty much just bet on trying to dodge that shit. And it's slow enough that you can, you know, like, you don't have to blink before you see it. You can just react to the fire strike itself. Good hold. Let's go check those messages really quick, actually, because you had sent me the last one. I didn't read it. Panned by too quickly. Okay. 5 stacking. I knew the Reaper was there. We were 5 stacking. Oh, it was the same message again. Okay. Nothing in chat. Okay. So you guys have gotten it down to 50 seconds, which I always feel like if you can get them under a minute, that's at least the first level of winning. Because the full cap is really the victory that you want. So now we're seeing the pressure come onto the high ground, which is nice. Now you have tanks that can actually take advantage of that, so that's good. You know, I said main tanks before, but I haven't seen actual Winston play in so long that main tanks in my mind are just Ryan Orisa. Like, there's so much Ryan in lower ranks, and then there's so much Orisa in higher ranks that I forget that we consider Monkey a main tank. He just doesn't play the same way. Nice. A little bit too early. Ooh. Yeah, Pulse was a little bit too early. Once the bubble disappeared, the bomb fell off because it was attached to the bubble. Okay, so you got them into overtime. So that's really the second level of victory, in my mind. You know, you get them under a minute, that's good. They don't cap, that's nice. You get them into overtime, that's alright, that's still good. The third level of victory is, well, they have a minute and they capped. And then after that, I feel like you've just lost. You haven't actually, but I think it's easy to think that they got it all the way to third point. Or like I think depending on how the round ends, it could be really easy to kind of like feel like you're losing or feel like you're winning. But I think something that's important to keep in mind is that you haven't done your attack yet. There's very different skills that come with attacking and defending, and I think a lot of teams expect that their attacking skills and defending skills are going to be the same, but they're not. So as long as you've given your best effort on either one, when you go into the second, you have to come in with a completely new mindset, because your ability to play those angles is going to be different because they're different angles. You know, you're coming at them from different perspectives.
Why am I here? Hello there. I must say you're looking quite.
So I am looking for you to kind of get a little bit more onto this Hanzo. Something that I say sometimes is that in order to climb, you really have to be the best person in your lobbies consistently. And I think that Hanzo might be the best person in the lobby, but you have to make it so that you played the best game in the lobby at the very least, or make it so that he's not as effective. So maybe one of your other teammates can have the best game in the lobby. Because I just, from your perspective at least, I haven't seen a lot of pressure. Nice first pick. Ooh, that's a good trade though, because you are playing with the Mercy. Knock is not going to res you, however, unfortunately. I think the res there would have been good. Calling for the res there would have been good because it stops this from happening, right? You get your grapple earlier. You're already with your team a little bit sooner. You get that angle a little bit sooner. When you're playing this, try to go to that wide left hand side because it'll give you that much more space from the enemies, and you don't have fall off damage, so you don't need to be any closer. It's a good pick again. Continuing to keep the Ash down is a good thing, even if you're not doing anything else. At least you're, I guess, neutralizing your effect. I hate Hanzo's head hitbox. So I liked you backed off there for a second, and I like that. I wish you would have gotten healing before you re-engaged, but it's it's not the worst thing that you re-engaged, especially since that res is there. It just might be a little bit of a waste of res. Could have resed hetero there. That would have been nice if you had just waited for healing instead of trying to pick the Hanzo. Like, I know a second ago I was saying, hey, force the fight onto the Hanzo, and now I'm saying I wish you had waited a little bit, but oof. But it's all comes down to circumstance. So I think you give yourself away there. You know he's up there. I don't think that's a fight you should take. You should never go into that close range. I know you have confidence in your skills. That's good, but you don't hit it, so you kind of, like, you throw that duel because you gave him the advantage, because you were a little bit overconfident there. I don't think it's bad to do that sometimes. Now that we see the results, I think we can definitively say that that was a bad idea. It's a weird thing, those types of fights, because if you do something like that, then it boosts your confidence, right? Like, you feel good about your shots that day, and you therefore might hit more shots. But you missing that led to you dying, and that means that you could have lost the team fight because, you know, the Hanzo was still around. Your Diva went to go chase him down, but you get what I'm saying? Like, the Hanzo can still get value and you can't because you're dead and he's not. So maybe he gets lucky, hits extra shots, or, you know, a healer heals him. Like, so many things can happen when you do something like that that you have to just be aware of. He really does hit his shots, though. I like this sightline just because it's back a bunch, so it's really hard for him to hit you. That's a great bomb. Great bomb at great timing. But I also like it because your tanks aren't really opening up any space for you there. It would have been really nice for there to be, you know, like, a little bit more pressure on the team as a whole, because I think that you don't need much time to really hit shots, but you couldn't really peek out there properly because there was so much fire being shot down the mid lane. So I think that given what was going on, I think that was good. Nice pick on the Ana again. Good job repositioning. Just a really small thing, but some good Widow players just won't do that reposition, that little maneuver right there, and it'll cost them. Okay, so it looks like you actually win this. Or, well, I guess... Let's see what happens, because they could very well, with Grav coming out, nice shot. I think that rotating onto the right side at this point would have been good, just because it gets you off of this spinning nonsense. Oh, nice C9, lol. But also because it would have opened the sightline onto the left side where they kept coming out of. So I think that would have been good. But I think it's a minor thing. I think you still hit good shots, and limiting the sightline the way you did was perfectly fine. I think some of those you just missed because that platform kept rotating and messing you up. So, I don't see how you lose this. But I say that about a lot of comp games that I play in. So, I mean, we'll see where this goes. But if this is a victory, I think all things considered, you played all right. I don't think you were really the reason that you won necessarily. Like, everybody's the reason that you won. Everybody factors into it. Insult Blake Zen. He's in the room with me right now. Do you guys win this? Tell me if you win this right now, and then I'll go insult Blake Zen. Hold on, this is the determinant. If you win this, then I'm not gonna not gonna watch this last minute of Ashe gameplay. We win this. Okay. Alright, let's see this. I like the Ashe pick, by the way, especially with the Mercy Pocket. It's basically the balance of McCree and Widow that you really might want. They can't dive you as easily because you're not Widow. You have some mobility, and some like actual like burst chunk damage, like with the grenade. Oh, what an anti. What are you doing? Were you just waiting for the engage? I hope you guys were calling an engage right there because you did nothing for like a solid 30 seconds there. Alright, now you're finally shooting at stuff. I guess you're afraid of the Hanzo, aren't you? I could see that you're playing like this because you're afraid of the Hanzo. Please don't be me and back up into walls. I back up into walls all the time. Did a good job staying alive though. So the first thing that I would like you to do is to go into the practice range and learn the projectile speed of Zen a little bit better, because you're hitting shots at certain distances and at certain speeds, but you got to get a little bit more comfortable with, you know, like all the ranges, especially if you're going to be playing Zen in, you know, this current state of Overwatch right now, because you're just not hitting enough to validate, you know, like playing Zen, you know. It seems to be those medium ranges, the high speed characters, and big fear of Hanzo, you know, those slim wispy characters that have, you know, like changing hitboxes based on what they're doing. I would be big fear of Hanzo too, to be fair, especially if you're playing Zen. Like, I'm sure that Hanzo is like looking for you. He's like, ooh, there's a Zen in the lobby? Bet, fam. Word, Zen. Imagine how pretty Australia would have been if it wasn't for... Oh, wait. What about the wildfires, though? Oh, wait. What about the tarantulas? Oh, wait. What about the rabbits? Oh, no, never mind. This Australia is pretty alright, then. I'm not gonna lie. Australia scares the shit out of me. Like, the idea of Australia itself. Could you imagine, like, walking around in your house and then you look up at the ceiling and there's just, like, the Godzilla of spiders just... staring down at you, demanding your soul. Nice shot. I think you could have realized that there was flux up and stopped shooting earlier. Also, please heal your Reinhardt. It's good that you have your Harmony on your Diva. You should always have Harmony on the character that's going to be the most aggressive. Or like the most likely to just take random poke damage. But, like, your Ryan was critical there. You could have at least helped him out. Putting Discord on Reinhardt is really good because it basically stops him from being able to drop his shield, because stuff like that happens if he has Discord. Like, anything will then evaporate him, especially with how much burst damage is just king right there. Nice shot. Can you hit the second one, though? Please? Ooh, ooh, ooh. Look at that, though. Hold on. Oh, my God. Look at this. Holy shit. What a shot, bro. Hold on, hold on, hold on. Alright, nice shot on the Hanzo. You can't finish him off, right? And then you're going to redeem yourself right here. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Ooh. Ooh. Here it is. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh! Straight into the fucking ground. Ooh. Redemption arc. Redemption. I haven't seen shots that good since I played basketball with my friends. That's a nice volley. All right, there's the actual redemption. All right. I like you. You seem to be very good at like hitting those kind of like reactionary 180 turnarounds, which is good, because it means that it'll be, you know, like one of the biggest things that you're gonna face is then is people jumping on you all the time, like all the time. So that's gonna help you stay safe. It's just in the mid fight you have to be able to contribute a little bit more damage, and hit a few more important shots to really make Zen like a considerable hero that you might want to play. Because right now he's just not in the state. He just dies too easily compared to all the other supports for him to be like reasonable. But really what it's going to come down to is you just like kind of learning the projectile speed better. Like I was saying, just go into the practice range and just shoot some bots or something. Or there's the practice range Ajira, A-J-E, fuck, I can't remember it off the top of my head if I try to spell it out. I just know it's Ajira. But it has a bunch of like different things that you could practice your aim with. It's a workshop game mode in the practice range. And that'll just help you get used to the projectile speed, but then you gotta go and learn like a little bit more like what all of the hero animations look like so you know what you're trying to hit. Like, you know, Hanzo, when he looks to the side or when he's looking down, his head does specific things. Ana, when she nades. Zen, when he shoots, his head dips down when he does a volley. Mercy, when she's flying, her body goes long ways. Things like that will really help you kind of like Lucio. When he jumps off the wall, he's going to go a specific distance because, you know, he jumped off of the wall. So you got to use that to your advantage and understand how fast he was going to understand how far he's going to go. Like, there's just a bunch of little things. Just prop up your Zen aim a little bit more so that you can really be a factor in the victory, not just a non-factor in the loss. Good job, though. Big plays all around. Okay, so I am going to be doing the next VOD review from somebody at my university. They're not trying out for the team just yet. They said that they have a difficult time getting through ranked play due to some anxiety issues. So I'm going to do a review for them because they asked me to, and because I've been doing VOD reviews forever pretty much at this point. But let's see how this goes. I don't know if it's a victory. I don't know if it's a loss. I don't know if it's ranked. Whatever. Actually, let's see if they told me anything in particular. All right. Lucio, it was a loss, but I've been trying to work on improving as support since I kind of main it now. All right. So we are looking at Frosty Myriad, thankfully. Excuse me, can you go to the hero, please? Thank you. Thankfully, this person has their what do you call it? Their username is the same as the Discord name, which is nice. You know what? Before I do this, let me get some water. I'll be right back. All right, my last VOD review earned me water. Hopefully this next VOD review will earn me food, because I am hungry. Oh, man. Alright. So I don't know what rank this is, so we're just going to start with some general stuff. We're going to look at the composition just very briefly. So somebody hasn't picked yet, which is unfortunate, which I'm going to lend to believe that means it's kind of a little bit of a lower rank, probably closer to gold, just because I've noticed largely that the games in higher ranks, you don't have little things like that happening. a lot of times when you're looking at like silver games or gold games or even sometimes plat games, people won't pick till late. It's more often that you'll have a lever. It's more often that you'll have just somebody who's almost blatantly throwing, it seems like, or maybe they're just not blatantly throwing. Maybe they're just really, really bad, and that's why they're in silver. But we don't know who that one person is. So let's just work around the tank line. You don't have a lot of shielding. You don't have anybody to specifically speed around to get in or out of engagements. Nothing on your team really synergizes naturally too well right now. Your Zarya wants to be close. Your Sigma wants a little bit of space. Your Zarya wants to be aggressive. Your Sigma wants to poke and retreat. That's generally the play styles for those two different characters. So it'll be interesting to see how they coexist. On the enemy team, they seem to be playing some sort of awkward dive. But I don't expect there to be any actual dives, but what you actually have to be considering is that there's going to be a lot of sudden deaths, a lot of burst damage from the Junkrat and the Widow. So if your Widow isn't winning the duel, then you have to be aware that at any moment there's going to be somebody that you can't heal. So there's going to be other types of value that you have to get outside of just being able to heal your team, right? Speeding them around, booping people away, maybe assassinating, like the Widow if she's an easy target to hit, or finishing people off your team. So let's see how you're able to get it done. But ahead of time, we have to go into this knowing that there's going to be value outside of healing that we have to get, and that your team doesn't synergize very well, so that the execution is going to have to be a little bit better because of that. So we get early positioning onto the point because the enemy team doesn't have a Lucio, and the Wrecking Ball is playing kind of a flanker backline style. Okay, so far not too bad. You seem to have a decent understanding of when you should be speeding and when you should be healing, which is always good because there's plenty of Lucios that don't have a clear understanding of that. I think the one thing that you need to probably start looking at is, or that I'm gonna at least be looking at, is your amp management. So amp is a really important cooldown for Lucio because it's going to be how he controls the engagements. But you seem to be doing it for one of two things, maybe just one thing, but you seem to be amping whenever you see somebody critical, and then if you happen to be amped and then you need speed, then you just swap over to speed to full grow because you have to get out like right here. So the first thing I'll say is that you seem to have a very aggressive in the enemy team's face style, which isn't bad. You definitely can play Lucio that way. There's plenty of aggressive Lucios out there that can kind of show that the playstyle is viable. It's just a matter of some of these engagements you need to be a little bit more careful with, right? So you need to be a little bit more wary of the Junkrat. So we're going to assume at this point, because there haven't been a ton of picks and because there hasn't been a ton of organized kind of team fights, it's just been a lot of jumping in and out, that you're in the lower ranks. So we're not too afraid of the Widow. But you definitely do need to be aware of the spam damage that Junkrat can provide. So there's been a few times that you jump in front of his sightline or literally into him. And even if it's just luck, you can get picked off of that just because he's a Junkrat. Just because he happens to be shooting and then you jump into it and you can't control yourself after you've already launched yourself into him. So just be careful who you're launching into, right? You don't want to be launching into characters like Mei. You don't want to be launching into a Junkrat. You don't want to launch yourself towards a Reaper just because they have such good burst damage, close range burst damage. So I think that you can be a little bit more cautious in terms of where you're going, right? Just trying to play in the center of your team, up on a wall, or up on a high ground above your team can be good. Just to kind of give yourself a little bit more perspective of the team fight. Because you're jumping in and out so fast all the time here, you don't really have a clear idea of where everybody is and what's going on. And that means that the decisions you're making are ill-informed or lack full information, right? You don't know who to speed around or who to heal because you don't know where anybody is at this point, except for the people who are currently on your screen. And that's if you can even process how much stuff is happening on your screen, right? Because once we're going to get into these ults in a second, second, they're going to start throwing out Coalescence and Grav, and you're going to hit beat, and, you know, they're going to have Riptire with its big smoke and puffy explosion and everything like that. The screen is going to get very difficult and very difficult to comprehend and very cluttered, which means you have to have a good understanding of the situation before and after so that you can bridge that gap of when things start getting too cluttered to see. So take your time. Don't be afraid to kind of just chill in the back and spam damage. You don't have to be up on top of somebody in order to deal damage on them. And Lucio's kit isn't necessarily made to deal damage, right? He's just additional supplementary damage. He's support, you know? He supports your damage with additional damage. So just play a little bit slower. And just be careful about those amps, because that was a 9-second amp, and I don't think you healed anybody in it. Or that was like a 9-second cooldown that you just started because there was nobody in it. Okay, so not an entirely necessary beat there, because most of your team's in good health. You generally want to be using beat to counter something or to save your team if they all happen to be critical during a team fight. Like, you can save team fights that way. I think this is one of those decisions that in part of your kind of like chaos, like you're in the middle of the fight. Like, I think if we zoom out, you're going to be pretty much in the middle of the fight. So you don't have a lot of perspective on what's going on. Yes, Lucio has AoE ability, so you want to be in the middle of the fight, but you don't want to be like in the middle of the enemies as well, right? Unless you have full control over your mechanics and movement abilities. And it just doesn't seem like you do right now. The other key thing that I can see and identify that you don't have full control is that you're not next to a wall. Lucios generally want to be close to a wall because that's where they have their most movement, right? That's where all of your movement abilities are really going to kind of like shine and get their most value. So you want to be trying to stay as close to walls as possible so that at any moment you could just get a burst of speed off of wall, or you could get a double jump type off of, you know, like a shatter or something crazy like that. But you're not going to get that if you're standing in the middle of nowhere. So try to play a little bit closer to walls, and also try not to be in the enemies. It's AoE, so you can kind of like, you could be positioned. Hold on, let me go up here. I'm gonna use my pen. Oh my god, I get to use my pen, bro. This is great. This is the greatest day. I don't think I've ever had a better day, right? Instead of being over here where you currently are. Wait, that's not my color. How do I choose my color? There we go. There we go. All right. So instead of being over here where your aura is kind of like stretched out like this, you could very well, I guess let's change the color now, be over here where your aura is stretched out like this, and that's not exactly your aura, of course, right? And those circles aren't exactly the same size, but essentially what you're doing is you're trying to heal one person within your range or radius, or at least give them some type of support, right? Whether you're giving them speed or healing, but you don't need to be on both people at the same time in this instance, because neither of them really need it, and you can close this gap by wall riding around and just be next to the person who needs it most. You can also use this type of positioning to make sure that your teammates get closer together, and you can get more cohesion in your team fights this way, and get more coordination and more working together, right? Because right now they're kind of split. They're on opposite sides of the point where the enemy is kind of like in between them in a way. And they can't really work together too easily because they're split like this. They have to struggle to see each other, struggle to find each other, and fight through enemies to even be close to each other. That's even if they comprehend the fact that they need to get to one another, right? If they've even noticed that they're not next to each other. So I think you can kind of like use this positioning here to then, you know, speed the Sigma around, speed him, and try to move him back towards you know, your other person. Lucio can very much be a team management type of role rather than just, you know, a support that that heals and speeds, or I guess even does damage, right? Like, he's more than just that. He's also somebody who acts as kind of like a leader for the team. He acts as the glue. So I think that your position is questionable. I said a lot of stuff here so far. So I'm sorry if that gets a little bit confusing, because there's some things that you are going to need to focus on and some things that you don't, some information that you don't need right away, right? But the thing to focus on right now is definitely going to be your positioning and your ability to see the fight as a whole, right? Not always being in the middle of the fight, but also understanding when to look from the outside in, from the outside looking in. Sorry, I had to make sure that I said that right. And how to get good angles, right? So a good angle could be, you could be wall riding on these pillars, just shooting down, or, you know, like wall riding on these pillars. And I mean, these pillars are going to be hard to wall ride on if you're not used to wall riding and shooting at the same time. But you could also be, you know, like up here, getting a better perspective of things, or out over here, still healing your team, but, you know, getting a better perspective of things, just so that you can understand what's going on. Because from where you are right now, you don't recognize that most of your team is over here in this hallway over here. Like, you could get a really nice regroup and be able to get some really nice healing on your team with this immortality out and the Baptiste over here, and, you know, like good centralized damage. Like, you could help that push there, you know, help that strong cohesive unit there by adding to it and being there yourself. I don't think this is terrible, because you still are able to poke at the Hammond. It's just not optimal, right? And we really look to optimize things in video games. There's no point at which you can heal more than the enemy Lucio. There's no point at which you're going to be faster, or you're going to shoot stronger bullets or whatever, or, you know, like have anything, better legs. You're not going to have stronger legs than the enemy Lucio. So you really have to look to optimize things where you can. And one of those things there is your positioning and your awareness. So we're just watching the end of this tick out. I want to see if you win this fight or not, really. Let's actually see this from a third point perspective, because it's getting a little bit chaotic. Like, it's been chaotic for a while, but it's getting a little bit, like, much, honestly. I can't really tell what's going on at this point, aside from the fact that you're shooting at the monkey and he's primaling all over the place and jumping around everywhere. So you managed to win that point. So generally what winds up happening in the highest level is, you know, one team will take it, they'll hold on to it the entire time because they have defending advantage. Maybe they lose it once or twice or something like that, whatever happens. But if they get to this 99-0, just for your knowledge, what winds up happening is, if you've had the 99, let's say like this blue team has had the 99 now, is they can hold all of their ultimates until you get to pretty much 80%, and then they'll have all their ultimates, and then they could hit Y, or Q, I guess, if you're on PC. Or triangle if you're on PlayStation 4, and I'm not even going to talk about the Switch, because I don't know what those buttons are. I think it's A. I don't know why A would be at the top, but I feel like it is. But yeah, they basically just use all of their ultimates at the same time, and then they can win the team fight. This isn't going to be something that you can use anytime soon unless you're actually working with other people. But if you happen to be working with other people and you get into a situation where you have the 99% and the enemy team has 0%, you can try to get your team to hold all their ultimates until the very last fight, and then you all just throw them out there, because ultimates are so strong that if all 6 people throw out ultimates, it's almost a guaranteed win, unless you all misuse them somehow. So let's go over, you're re-engaging into this fight with Beat. One of the things that you have to be aware of with Beat is that you want to use it to really counter something. So you always have to take into account and use that tab button as much as possible to see the enemy composition, what you're really going to be countering. So in this instance, there's really 3, maybe 4 things that you want to be countering, right? It's going to be those big bursty type damage ultimates that are going to come out from the enemy team. Anything that's a normal ability, you could usually negate it with another ability. But ultimates generally need to be countered with other ultimates. The 2 exceptions are Res and Immortality Field. Those are things that can negate entire ultimates with just the use of a long cooldown ability. So the things that you're going to be looking out for here, the bursty type of stuff I was telling you before, is going to be that Junkrat, the Hammond mines, Junkrat Tire, Hammond mines. And then the maybes are going to be Baptiste and Tracer. Those two ults are kind of like minor in a way. Baptiste ults can be very, very dangerous and can burst down targets if the Baptiste is accurately shooting through it. But it might be more worthwhile to hold out for Tire or for Mines. Generally, what you want to do is you want to pick one, and you want to say, when I hear that voice line, I'm hitting my ultimate. Because it can get a little bit overwhelming to say, there's 4 things that I could counter. Let me choose it as the situation evolves. That's what higher level players will be doing. But that can get very, very complicated if you're not already understanding the fundamentals of the game already, right? Like if you're not already working cleanly with your team and finding the best positioning automatically, then also adding in that thought process is going to be a lot of work. So you have to build up your fundamentals first. And one of the fundamentals that you could just leave for now, for the very basics, is just say, which ult am I countering? Junkrat? Okay, when I hear Tire, I can hit beat. Don't hit beat automatically when the Junkrat tires, because usually they're going to take a second or two to get to you. And beat will decay before the duration of Tire expires. So as long as the Tire isn't on top of you already, which I guess if it is, it's probably beat's cast time is too long anyway. But you want to wait a second or two before you actually beat once Tire comes out. We'll do a recap just in case I'm saying too much at the end. That's something I generally do anyway, because I really just like look at the Vods and then, okay, so you're beating for mine. That's not terrible. Your team was largely in it, so it's actually pretty good. I think I'm moving further away from the mic as I do this review. But I say a lot of stuff throughout the duration because I really want to try to give you as much potential information as possible based off of your gameplay. But at the end, I'm going to distill it into things that I think are most important for you to focus on, so that you can kind of like have a checklist to start with. It's much easier rather than you having to, you know, process all the information and look back at it later, or process all the information to figure out what's most important, or process all the information and, you know, like having to constantly, like, you'll always have this to look back on. I lost myself in that sentence. I'm not gonna lie. I walked circles around myself there. I don't even know what I did. Okay, so your wall riding mechanics are, I think, a little bit iffy. A question I would ask is if you've put on backwards wall riding, just because it looks like it's a little bit lower leveled, and that's something that, or lower ranked, and that's something that a lot of lower ranked people haven't realized is even a setting. So if you haven't, go into your Lucio settings, Lucio specific controls, and make sure that you have backwards wall riding on. There's another setting there for toggle healing. That's unfortunate. Or what was it? Toggle healing, or it's toggle speed or something like that, or toggle crossfade. There it is, probably toggle crossfade. But basically, you'll be by default on speed, and then you have to, or default on healing, and then you have to hold down the button to go to speed. If you get like shattered or something like that, you'll go back to healing automatically because you can't hold down the button anymore. That's just a preference if you like to toggle it or not. I have toggle on because, like I said, if you get shattered or something, if you get hard stunned, you'll just default back to healing, and it's just good for kind of like keeping you alive sometimes. It'll come in clutch every once in a while, but it's not like it doesn't have its downsides, right? If you get brig stunned and then you need to speed out, well, now you have to toggle the speed again, and that small delay could get you killed. But you definitely should have backwards wall riding on because there's literally no penalty to having it on. And and yeah, it just adds an extra kind of like bit of utility to your kit.
Give yourself to the rhythm. I'm not hearing that noise.
Okay, good job checking for your team there, making sure that they're all as together as they possibly can be. I do like that. Just again, be wary of jumping into the bulk of the enemy team. And just being in the midst of them. You got a little bit split, your team got split. And I don't think there's anything you're going to be able to avoid until you get either one, a less chaotic game, right? Like you're playing into Ball Winston, which means there's going to be a lot of disruption for your team, especially with like the Junkrat back there. He's going to be like spamming concussions, and it's going to disrupt your team a bunch. But you definitely do want to be looking to kind of staying as cohesive as possible, or regrouping your team as much as possible, but also not just being in the middle of the enemy team, right? Just like the angles that you're taking are very narrow and shallow. They don't give you a lot of good sight lines, right? Take advantage of that wall riding a little bit more. Take advantage of the high grounds a little bit more. Get a better idea of what you're looking at so that you can support your team and call things out a little bit easier, right? You also don't necessarily need to put pressure on the point because your tank should be doing that. If you're at a rank where your tanks aren't really doing that consistently, that's fair and fine, and that happens.
Move to the beat, and the beat goes on.
Let's see where this goes. I don't think that boop was the best idea. He was rocked. I mean, you didn't know he was gonna get rocked. Just don't panic boop people away. If you could avoid it, try to keep your boops for very specific moments where you know that somebody's gonna die if you don't boop them away. But you had your tank there with you with full defensive abilities. Your tank can negate that rather than just you know, like booping the Winston away. So I guess you guys win this one, because this goes on for another like 10 minutes. Either that or you go to 99-99 with plenty of overtime. Good boop. I like that boop. Just because it forces them to use their movement ability. And I like that boop even more. That was a good maneuver. Okay, so let's look at if that was really necessary. And if that was a good beat. Because this is the type of situation where you can kind of like accidentally lose games because you use beat here and then you don't have beat for tire, and then the mines, let's say the mines might have not gotten as much value as you thought, and the tire does get value later. So your Doomfist is on point, capturing, you come in, it's only Doomfist in there, and he's out. Yeah, I think that this is a situation where you have to recognize that nobody's on point where the mines are, and that you don't need beat. Because your tanks can really, you know, be using their abilities to clear this, and now you won't have beat for tire. So there's a good chance that tire's going to get value, because it's much harder to bubble for tire than it is to, you know, bubble and walk into the mines or something like that, you know? So you flip the point. Doomfist ults. Cool, cool, cool. On this map, generally, it's good to do. Let's look at this map from above, because this is a very open outside map. So hold on. Let's get a little bit better of a perspective. Let's use the pen again. I'm very excited to use the pen, so I'm gonna try to get value where I can, you know. So there's gonna be a few areas that you want to kind of like pay attention to, and I'm sorry that I'm not that good at this. There's also a little balcony space up here. There's high ground up here. There's this up here. This over here. This high ground, and that wraps all the way around, you know. So these high grounds right here are all going to be pretty important for you to be at least aware of. As you climb in ranks, there's going to be more and more people who want to use this space. And as you even play games, you're going to come across people that want to use this space a bunch. So this space has two different values. One is it's high ground. So it's really good for shooting angles and for dealing damage for DPS. You could use high ground to create mismatches that you really are favorable to the person on the high ground, because the person on the high ground can at any time just back up a little bit and all of a sudden you can't see them, while the person on the low ground has to actively go find some sort of pillar or cover. The other is going to be for characters like Winston. You can kind of like start on the high ground and then just drop off the high ground onto a low ground area where enemies are, and still have your movement ability to kind of like get out and run away from things that you might be afraid of, right? Like if a brig stuns you and you take 200 damage instantly, it's fine. You could just jump away. So as Lucio, you have the ability to traverse the high ground very easily. So something that I would like to see more of is being able to use that high ground. It'll give you that better perspective that I've been talking about, where you'll be able to see, you know, the fight a little bit clearer and know who really needs your help and where you really need to be putting pressure on the enemy team. But it'll also prevent the enemies from being able to use it if you're booping them off of it, and it'll give you a good angle to like shoot down and just spam your damage in from. So just try to be kind of like aware of the high ground at the very least. Nobody's been really using it actively throughout this game so far, but do I have to like, okay, there we go. But there are going to be games that, you know, people are going to be basically abusing it. And it's partially your responsibility as a Lucio to take care of those, because like you just did, you can kind of get up and down to those spaces pretty easily.
Push, y'all. You're going to be fine.
Good boop attempts. Okay, so this is that tire that I was talking about. Gets value on Zarya. And this is a fight where you definitely probably could have used Beat to save those two heroes that wound up dying. I mean, it looks like you're going to win this out. But I don't think it's really in part to you that you're going to win this. I think that you played a very minor role in your ability to actually... Alright, I've really got to figure out how to get rid of... Hold on, we're going to do that first, actually. How do you get rid of that chat, bro? Social? Gameplay? Controls? Sound? Video? Alright, well, I guess we'll have to look it up later. Fuck, man. Alright, well, I don't think you really factor into you winning this fight if you do wind up winning it, because, excuse me, you didn't do anything that put pressure onto the enemy team, and you didn't do anything that was really going to clutch it out for your team. You have very minor healing, so any healing you would have done I don't think is significant enough to factor in, and you're not specifically speeding people into positions where they can get more value than they already were. You weren't actually speeding anybody to any new locations at all, because they were always on point. So I think that there's more you could have done by having Beat, and by having a better perspective. I mean, you probably could have booped certain targets away from point that were a little bit more of a threat. Thankfully, your team comes through, you win this point, and you're good to go on to the next one, but it's not on part of you. And I think that's what we really need to be looking at when we're playing ranked, is that you really want to try to be the best player in the lobby if you want to consistently climb. And you don't have to be, right? There's going to be games where you can kind of like work with your team to get the victory, but you're not going to climb consistently like that because your teammates are never going to be consistent. So, nice buckets by your Widow. Just try to focus on what you can do and what you feel like is your strengths, you know, like try to find what's good for your character, what's good for you, and doing those two things will usually result in you having better performances and playing better games, because your character is going to be good at specific things, and within those capacities you'll be good at some of the things that your character is good at, right? As long as you're looking and playing the right characters, or at least working on certain skills, right? You don't have to be naturally good at something all the time. Sometimes it's something that you have to work hours on. I've been playing Overwatch for about 2 years. Oh, I'm a Lucio and a Doom One Trick. Hello, Lucio and Doom One Trick. I was not expecting someone to be in the chat. But yeah, I started Overwatch about 2 years ago. I play Silver, and just recently I got my tank into 27. It's a slow grind technically, but like you're able to climb and at least get to a point where you can feel more confident in yourself and at least feel like you're somewhere where you're growing and you're getting better. So it's not easy, you know. It's just not impossible as well. but you really want to trying to do things that are good for your character, and things that you're comfortable with doing, especially at first. If you're somebody who's good at positioning or good at wall riding or good at movement or something like that, then you should be kind of utilizing that a little bit more, trying to see where you can find that value. If you're somebody who's better at mechanical skill, then try to find that fragging potential. Try to get yourself into spots where you can emphasize that fragging potential, maybe. Overwatch is my first FPS game. I got it after the first Halloween game. Nice. Nice.
Double time. I hope nobody saw that.
I want to see how you do this. Okay, so just a small thing. On these maps, you can, I'm pretty sure you amp speed out the gate, but you amp speed, you actually jump off of this wall right here, and then you can catch this wall out here, which will allow you to kind of get a smoother transition back to point. I got placed bronze, not big surprise when slowly climbed into, I'm now on 39, smelling camping widows, so yeah, it's a slow grind. Nice.
My ultimate is charging.
You seem very content to stay in this positioning here. Just understand that there's more to this map than just that, and especially when some of your team is playing very, very far forward. So you had your BAP up there as well a second ago, but your Zarya is also up there, and your Sigma's offering support. But I'm just going to do a similar thing that I did before, just so that we can look at this map from an overhead perspective, and just get a little bit more. Let's see if we can get rid of that text at the bottom. No, okay, well, oh well. So let's just look at the high ground again really quick. So we have this space up here, and this isn't directly on point, so it's not going to be maybe as effective as it could be, but it still is going to play a factor in certain fights and certain matchups. It does give you kind of like a sight line onto this angle back here, and like it'll give you, like, this is the space you're playing from because this is the space that it's comfortable to play from. So that sight line already has merit just in the fact of like you yourself play from that area, and that high ground has sightline onto there. So even against you yourself, it has merit. So this high ground up here is going to be the same as the one on the opposite side, and then of course you're going to have this big high ground up here that you can use for, like, if you can get up here, you can make easy rotations onto like the back of the enemy team to go back and forth and stuff like that. Because actually, oh, hold on. Let me do this first, and then I'll answer that. Sorry, I get distracted easy. Because, yeah, it's going to be limited sightline from the enemy, especially if they're playing from this kind of, like, back corner right here. So we're going to... This is also small high ground. Sorry. But we're going to just kind of, like, look at not just the high ground on this one, but also just rotational pieces. So the rotational areas is basically just going to be positions where you can move from one space to the next with as much safety as possible. So from where you're playing over here, you can go underneath and go to the other side, but you've tried to do that a few times and you've already been denied, right? Monkey's been sitting in there. There's been somebody who's kind of like watching that angle, or who happens to be also trying to use it. So once you've kind of tried to use that once and it doesn't work, then you have to find another one. So what are those other options that you have? Well, the first one was the one that I was talking about before, especially as Lucio. You can utilize high ground fairly easily. So you can utilize this upper kind of like rotation up here so that you can get into the enemy team's body. As Lucio yourself, you're not looking to get into the enemy team's body by yourself all the time. On well, it can be important to get behind them and get some, high value boops into the well itself. But you're going to be looking to use these to back up your team when they get in, or to help your team get into the engagements faster or smoother, right? You can boot people from behind their shield to get them into your ally's sightline, and that can be very good. Or you can maybe just, spam damage from up there for a second before retreating back. You could use that as scouting or whatever. But you definitely had teammates who were up here in this threshold who could have used your help, and you could have used either of those two rotations to get to them. Another one that you can, another thing that you want to maybe be taking into account is this whole right side over here. So there's a lot of low-level players that don't really use that space too often, and it's a little bit of a shame because that space is actually fairly important. I'm gonna let's clear this board and go look at just that space specifically, because it offers, I think, a lot of utility for many different types of characters, and when you're playing from there, I think you generally can notice a difference in terms of where you have what options you have, right? So when you're playing from this area over here that you've been playing from, let's look at it from your team's perspective. You have very limited options, right? You can retreat to the left where it's very easy to get spammed out because it's a narrow space. You can retreat back to the right, but you're losing enemies, like you're losing sightline on enemies, you're losing point presence, and you're basically just retreating. Or you could push deeper into the point, which is dangerous because it's well. So you can get booped in by most of the characters that are going to be played. Like, everybody's going to be looking to play a character on this map that can boop you in some sort of way. And even though not everybody's going to be able to do that, there's definitely going to be at least one person on the enemy team that's looking for that. Right now that they have a Pharah, they have a Orisa, and they have a Monkey. I guess you could also count the Junkrat. It's just not going to be as easy for him, but there's definitely going to be people who can throw you into that well. So the options in terms of what you could do over there are a little bit more limited, but largely because of that small space to the left where you can get spammed out very easily. So when you come over to the right side, this area is a little bit more open and has an easier to access mini pack. So it's going to be easier for you to make rotations. It's also going to be easier for you to open up sight lines because if you're playing from this back angle, you'll notice that you can see the point in two different kind of like angles here. And this is just going to be useful for being able to, you know, put pressure on enemies and close out certain sight lines. You can kind of just strafe to the left and close out that sight line. You can strafe inside and close out the other one. You could also make rotations into the into the enemy's kind of like comfort zone, right? Because they're potentially also going to be playing over here. You can make rotations into the enemy's comfort zone by just coming into this space over here. So largely it's going to be beneficial to play over here, but you can't play split from your team. And this is, I think, one of the tricky things about playing something like tank and support, right? Is there's going to be beneficial things for you to do, but you're going to also want to be playing with your team. So in this instance, I'm telling you that it's good to play from the right side, but nearly your entire team is playing from the left side. So you can't really use the right side. Unfortunately, that is just going to have to be information that you potentially use later, or you use in very specific situations. Like I was saying, you can use that to rotate around and get into the enemies, or use it to safely get into sight lines where you can help your enemies a little, or help your allies a little bit more, sorry. But there's just more to this map than this small section, and it would be nice to see you kind of like break away from that. So looking over at chat, you can amp speed out, then quickly wall onto the lamppost, then the wall. That's the best way to do it. I can see that being just difficult for somebody who is unfamiliar with it, but yeah, let me go look at it again just so that we can have a visual representation. So you're saying all the way to this lamppost out on this left side over here? Can you really go that distance as Lucio? I've never actually just like looked at that straight out. Okay, and then the next thing says, I mean, Mercy and Moira can boop with melee. I mean, if you're going to use that logic, anybody can boop with melee. But if you're getting booped off of a point with melee, then either you're facing a god tier player, or you're just trying to throw. I don't know. If you get booped by melee, you have problems. You amp outdoor, wall slide, then post. Okay, so yeah. Chat saying that you can make this. You can basically amp off of that, off of this door. Use pen because pen's fun. Off of this door right here, make this distance and hit the next one there. I really got to get better at this whole pen thing, one step at a time. All right, click back on this. There we go. All right, so yeah, it would be nice to see you use a little bit more of the space on this map here itself, because you're kind of pigeonholed in this space, and even though your team was pushing their advantage, you could have been there to support them. The Sigma was doing fine on his own poking from way back. He wasn't taking any damage back there. You didn't need to be there. He wasn't moving, so you didn't need to speed him. So you weren't adding anything to his play right there, you know? Right, okay. That is another side note. Something that I think could be a little bit tricky to implement too. So chat says looking up can make you go further. So when you're wall riding as Lucio, the direction that you're looking in terms of like up and down can augment how far you will go. So if you're indoors and you don't want to be hitting the ceiling, you want to look down so that you can kind of like get less height on your jumps, and it'll allow you to wall ride smoother in those situations because hitting the ceiling will slow down your speed. If you want to get more speed, if you're out in big open spaces where you happen to need to cover big distances like we were looking at before, then you want to look up. You double tap jump, don't hold it down to help him out some. Oh, you're saying off of walls? Double tap jump, don't hold it down to help him out some. Okay, yeah, so in order to do kind of like maximize speed, because you get speed boost for actually jumping off of the wall, generally you want to be kind of like consistently jumping off and on walls. You don't want to just be like smooth wall riding along. So it can be kind of like beneficial to do that, but just you have to understand beforehand what your rollouts are, and the rollouts are really the sequence of movement that you want to go through. So you want to go from like, if you want to go from pillar to pillar, then like if you wanted to go from this one pillar on the right to the pillar on the left to the pillar on the left even further, then that's good. But you have to know that beforehand so that you can space out your movement. Like in your head, you have to understand it beforehand, because like we were saying, like chat was saying, when you look up and look down, it'll augment how far you can go. So if you know that you want to go from pillar to pillar to pillar, you have to be looking up and down appropriately to get the right distance. So you have to kind of like learn those rollouts, which I think for me would be kind of a secondary thing to go over, just because of the like I think your positioning has just been kind of wonky, but I guess that could help your positioning just in terms of understanding how Lucio's movement works a little bit better. Good catch. Okay, so I could tell you definitely don't have backwards wall riding on, because there you would have just like your character would have wall rode backwards. So just go into the settings, make sure that you're turning that on.
I'm just getting started.
Okay, yeah, you can absolutely make that. I don't know why I've never... Like, I've seen Frogger and SK probably do it 1,000 times, and I've never actually internalized that they're making it that far. Unfortunate. So that was one of those situations like I was talking about earlier, where the cast time for beat is just too long for Riptire sometimes if it's too close. You really have to try to be omnipotent in this game in some ways, in terms of understanding like where audio is coming from and stuff like that, because he sounded close to me, but that's something that can be difficult to tell from time to time. Just know that investing beat for Tire is going to be a risk from time to time, and try to start understanding how far someone might be based off of the sound. Tire's audio gets quieter the longer it's out, so you have to take that into account when you're kind of trying to keep track of it, but it's not impossible, right? It's not impossible to kind of just like listen out for it and start to learn what that sounds like. It's just a matter of playing the game, playing against Junkrat, and getting used to it over time. Chat says, I think learning wall riding is the most important part to help survival. Be more aggressive, not get picked off, fast fight. Sorry, I just need my desk by accident. Yeah, wall riding is definitely significantly important to Lucio. It's his most core ability, right? You have to learn how to walk before you can learn how to run. And I think that kind of applies to Lucio more than it does to any other character in the game. I would just wonder, I guess for me, it's a factor of when I'm doing these VODs. It's a little bit difficult to kind of like show certain techniques when you're just watching. So learning matchups, chat says in learning matchups. Learning matchups is with every character. You always have to know your matchups. So like I was saying earlier with Junkrat, you have to know not to cross his sightlines or not just to jump straight into him, because even if it's just luck, even if he's just spamming, you can die very easily to Junkrat spam. So matchup is going to be across the board. Like if you were to talk about fundamental Overwatch kind of like concepts, matchups is going to be like number 2 or number 3. when you get into the nitty gritty of the game, because it comes down to knowing like how the game works in terms of like the game modes and the roles. And then after that, you start learning the heroes, and that is one of the core things. So, for instance, on the enemy team, you're going up against the Sombra. So, for Sombra, you're going to have to be wary of getting hacked all the time. And that means you're going to have to be kind of perceptive to the decloaking audio. Maybe strafing. You know what? Chat is the coach now. That's it. Chat's the coach. No, but there definitely is going to be a lot of matchup stuff, but I think that the core part of matchups doesn't start happening until the enemies know how to play their character. And I don't think that the enemies know how to play their characters effectively enough, because if they did, they'd be shutting you down because your positioning is so bad. And I think that's why I've been starting with positioning so much and making sure that you know where the high grounds are and how to kind of like maybe use your resources from a position that's not the center of the team. Because the enemy, like you, if I was playing Sombra, I would just hunt you down all the time and hack you because you've been so out in the open. But this Sombra obviously isn't doing that yet because they don't see that as a potential option. So yeah, it's Overwatch is a lot. There's a lot of information in the game. There's a lot of decisions to be made, and even when you're doing coaching like this, there's a lot of decisions for me to make in terms of like what I can point out to you and what you should be absorbing first, because that's going to structure how you're really looking at the game. Sorry if I'm giving tip too much. I'm trying to help. Yeah, no problem. I mean, this is you're perfectly fine. I'm gonna read as much as I can because this is my first time actually having chat. I finally just got like a dual monitor setup. But it's more than fine for you to be active and engaged and everything like this. So yeah. It's also been a good reminder for me because there's so many. There's what 32 heroes in this game. I mean, I do it implicitly, but I forgot that Lucio gets a speed boost after jumping off of the wall. It's just something that I have a habit built up of, and I might have noticed it eventually, but it's a small tip that can be very important. So I'm not the best mechanically, but I know a lot of there's a ton of people who are like that. That's pretty much me. I'm not somebody who's very good mechanically. But my understanding of the game is high, and that's why I don't play on a team. I coach. So, we went off on a long tangent. Let's focus back on Frosty Myriad, because they're the star of this show. They're the reason we're here today. So this is overtime. This is a loss, so we know that this isn't going to go very well. But there are going to be certain kind of like ideas for re-engaging onto overtime points. The first is going to not overplay your hand. So I think what happens here is you're going for a boop because you want to try to like get as much value as possible, being that it's in overtime. So I think you want to try to get the big pick, the big play, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think your execution was a little bit poor. So understanding the fundamentals that we were talking about earlier, where you kind of look down while you're inside and constantly jump off wall, will help you get into that position a little bit quicker. But you're not really booping any targets that are going to be easy to kill. So who are you booping here? A Moira, a Mercy, a Monkey, and an Orisa. So the Orisa was fortified when you walked up to her. Moira has Fade, Monkey has Jump, and as long as somebody helps her and doesn't abandon her to the hollow pits of the well itself, the Mercy will have Guardian Angel to get back. So I don't think that it was a bad play. I just think that there were too many obstacles in your way, and maybe a little bit more thought could have gone into it beforehand, because I think you made this play just based off of the idea that you're in overtime and that somebody needs to make a play, not understanding what the enemies were actually running and how that could deny you. So I think you overplay your hand a little bit there in terms of just like getting to that position a little bit too early in the first place. Like, they see you before anybody. You didn't need to be there yet. You could have waited a little bit. But also, overplaying your hand in overtime is something that happens when, like, you're just trying to prolong and touch. I'm not going to focus on it too much right now, because I think the fights are too chaotic anyway for there to be really any clear, like, oh, you touch, I touch, we touch, who touch. It's which sounds weird when you say it like that out loud, but it's just it's yeah, it's not something that you really need to harp on right now. So here are the things that we're going to be looking at first. Your positioning. Making sure that you're not always in the middle of the fight, like dead center in the middle of the fight, is going to be important, because it's going to allow you to get better perspective on the fight, understand what your teammates are trying to do and where they're trying to do it, and trying to get you to put pressure into the right spots. We've identified several moments where you being there didn't help the enemies, didn't help because you weren't doing enough healing, or you didn't need to heal. You didn't help because you weren't speeding anybody into the right position, and you weren't denying anybody in particular by booping them, right? You can kind of like, if Monkey jumps in, you can boop him away from your team so that he doesn't land the damage. You can boop Sombra off of off your other support so that she can't assassinate them as easily. So things like that can kind of like be big value that you can get, but you have to be able to see them coming. So get more comfortable with your wall riding. Take advantage of high grounds, and make sure that you're able to see the whole fight and still be applying your aura. So you need to be playing it back a little bit more. I do like the aggression. I do like your willingness to get in people's face, because a lot of supports are too afraid and just act as a heal bot. But you need to know how to temper that down and how to play around other people. Okay, so let's go back to chat. I signed up to coach a team. He never responded. In overtime, there's two heroes stalling heroes, and heroes meant to get picks. Lucio's meant to stall unless it's decent boop maps. Stall is made boop. Stalling heroes are Lucio, Genji, Moro usually. Killing heroes are Genji, Doomfist, Echo. As Lucio, you're meant to help DPS and heroes with dives and stuff. Main healers are meant to heal tanks. Yeah, so mainly the point there is the fact that when you're actually going into overtime, Lucio is one of those characters that can kind of hop around the walls and stuff like that and just like stall out point. What I was talking about in terms of like overcommitting and playing your hand too soon is the fact that if you're stalling, if there's two people on point, right, and you're stalling and trying to bring out overtime, then one of those people is redundant. You don't both need to be on point, just one person at a time. You can sometimes be getting value off of point. Oh, excuse me, sorry. Off of point by getting other angles, but definitely if it's overtime, you can be just wall riding around. You don't even have to hit anybody. You just like faff about and just boot people, maybe if they're, you know, like in your way or something like that. Just stall point for your team, because that time will get value. I stalled for 5 minutes straight as Lucio. There have been some legendary Lucio stalls in the game of Overwatch. I know that for certain. But yeah, then the other thing is, you know, your main job isn't to heal your tanks or anything like that. Lucio and Zen are like low value healers in terms of like they have low numerical value for their healing, so they're much better if they have to healing squishy targets who don't have a lot of health to begin with. It's also to get off point, to get a pick if someone else can stall for a bit. Yeah. So if somebody else is stalling, you can go do something else to get additional value. So yeah, I'm gonna take a break really quick, heat up some food, and then the next VOD review that I'm doing is going to be an Xbox Gold. I'm pretty sure. I don't know what this ranking was, but this was PC. So yeah, I'll be back in just a bit.
Traveling to Eichenwalde. Ready for battle.
All right, we're back. um. Okay, so this is console Zarya. I think this is mid gold. I want to say. I don't remember off the top of my head.
But I will see them done.
I don't have the message that says they're ranking anymore either.
Incoming in 30 seconds.
You know what? I'm gonna lower the game audio a little bit more because it looks like it's about equal with my voice audio. I don't want that. So unfortunately, I'm not gonna have time to actually edit all of these. So I'm actually just gonna put the video up on the YouTube channel raw, and I'm just gonna put timestamps in the description. So okay, so composition, we're starting out with an Orisa Sigma. Very, very good composition, meta composition, but most people at this rank don't know how to play it properly, so I'm not really expecting you to dominate over this Roadhog Sigma, which is just inferior in terms of, you know, like, being able to shield properly and being able to do damage. Like, Sigma is such a good off-tank. He's so strong. He's such a strong off-tank that you can sometimes get away with playing him as main tank. But he's really not main tank material because he just doesn't have enough resources to be able to push the enemy team back the way you really need a main tank to do. And technically Orisa doesn't either. I'm not really sure why we still consider her a main tank. I think that's actually kind of old news. I really think in this composition it is more of you're just running two off tanks than anything else. It's just one can actually go onto point and survive, and the other one doesn't really want to do that too often because once he's out of cooldowns, it's over. Like, you just start running out of options. But Orisa's Fortify and Shield come back in such good rotation that she could just sit on point for a long, long time. So what you really want to be doing as tank is you really want to be thinking about how you're going to optimize the situation in the battlefield for your DPS and your supports. So you want to make sure that your supports have the space so that they don't get poked down, and you want to make sure that your DPS have the time and the opportunities made available to them. So when you're looking into this enemy team, you want to make sure that that Reaper isn't putting too much pressure on your backline, make sure that that Ashe doesn't have the greatest sight lines, but also make sure that you're using your pulls in order to enable your DPS and give them opportunities. It's not always going to turn out that way, that your pulls are going to get capitalized on at least, but it is, the option being there is better than the option not, right? So good pull off the bat, good rock from your Sigma, I like it. Good job. I want to almost say at this point that you're in comms with this Sigma, because that was a good job not fortifying. Like, you trusted your Sigma, or you were just ignorant of the fact that he was going to pull. I don't know which one. But it almost seemed like you were, you know, really working together. Good pull on the Moira, forced out fade, and good focus fire onto the right. So the thing that I would say here is that you backed up a little bit too much. You needed to push the engagement forward a little bit more. You always want to make sure that you're a little bit uncomfortable as a tank when you're playing, because if you're completely comfortable and feel like you're safe, it probably means that you're not putting pressure onto the enemy team. So I think you could have pushed forward a little bit more, gotten that space underneath the bridge, and cleared the choke point before any of this. Like, now the enemies are turning around, I feel like you could have been here a little bit sooner, putting pressure onto that Roadhog's back a little bit earlier. Nice Fortify. Okay, so you have Fortify up, but I'm not sure exactly why you're backing up. So you Fortified during armor while you have armored health, which is good because it means that you're going to negate the maximum amount of damage that you can. But while you have Fortify, you really want to be spending time trying to make sure that you're a thorn in the enemy side. While you're backing up here, the enemies are able to push into you, but you still have both of your supports up, right? Actually, hold on. Let me look at this really quick. Let me just make sure, because I realized... Alright, so DLX Asian 1 is actually the person we're doing the VOD review on. Or, let me make sure. Jesus Christ. I didn't realize that these were the same... I never considered that we have two people in here with the same username. So we are doing... Yeah, DLX Asian 1 was the one who sent the replay code, but they sent one for their cousin as well. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a VOD review with the Orisa. I'm going to stop after this, and I'm going to ask after which codes are for which, and then the next time, which will probably be tomorrow or the day after, depending on how this storm hits us, will, you know, be the other code. So looking at chat, I barely ever play Orisa. Put shields far up when there's space if there's blah, 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 or back up if I'm low. Also, Mercy was closing, DPSing. Yeah, so a bunch of just kind of small... I think you just could have been aggressive there just as a full. So we're going to keep going with this Orisa because this is the person who sent the replay code. As well as the person we've already started. Good flux by your Sigma. But I think still you could be pushing further forward. And you could, yes, be throwing this shield further forward right now. Okay. I don't know what... That might have been lag on part of the code itself. Because that looked really weird for me, at least. It looked like a jump. So just... It looks like you're doing it, but it just, you know, keep in mind that you want to try to keep your bongo behind some sort of cover so that it's not easy to break, you know? You want to make the enemies actually have to work to break it. Oh, no. There was a... Hey, let's go look at that again. Let's go look at the sightline that the Ash had to take. So you drop bongo right there. So I thought you had the right idea because it looked like you got it behind the structure itself, but it's still very much out in the open. So you want to make the enemies have to work to kill your bongo. So you really want to get it more back here. And that'll prevent your team from maybe pushing up with it a little bit. But most of the time, the poke damage that comes out while bongo's up is just so significant that it's able to secure you the team fight without your team having to aggressively push up. You want to use Orisa's abilities to anchor a position, not to back up or to necessarily push forward. You want to take free space when it's available, put pressure on the enemies, and create opportunities for your DPS. She's not played like Reinhardt where you have to push into the enemies and deal damage to them by pushing up. But she is somebody who wants to take advantage of opportunities and try to create them. Protect bongo with your body if you need, with your extra thick hitbox. Yes, yes, yes. Bongo is very important. It's 50% to all your teammates. So it's a pretty big kind of ability to have up. I don't know that hold necessarily does anything specific. Just try to have a little bit more discipline with that. But I don't think you've had a problem so far with your holds. But I also don't know if that's been lucked, right? Because you did the same thing earlier with the Moira where you threw your hold out and you pulled her forward. And that was good for, you know, like drawing her fade out. But you've done the same hold now here twice. But this time it doesn't have the added benefit of wasting fade. Good fortification. I'd prefer to see you not back off of point. So that you like I was saying earlier, if you're not uncomfortable, it means you're probably not in the best positioning. Like you're gonna get, I mean, it sounds weird because if I say you're not uncomfortable, you're not in the best positioning, like eventually you're gonna get yourself comfortable with being in those awkward positions. But like look at how much space you're affording this Sigma and this Moira when you very well could be kind of like fortifying and pushing forward. And you could have been here the whole time. You never had to move from this forward location because your supports you always had your support's attention. You always had the ability to be healed up as long as you used your shielding and fortifying properly. So eventually you cap, which is good. Good try. You could have aimed that a little bit higher just to kind of like make sure that you had a larger margin for error. Unfortunately, that Roadhog's bad. So I don't think this is necessarily the position that you need to be doing this from. You could very well contest this Roadhog while sitting on cart. And Orisa is the payload queen. because she likes to anchor positions, and the cart is a moving anchorable position where you can fortify and throw shield on top of it and it'll move, which makes it very beneficial to Overwatch, to Orisa, which is why you had things like the pirate ship composition come to Overwatch, because, you know, like, it negates one of Bastion's biggest weaknesses in the way, his inability to move, and it just makes it so that you didn't need to move anyway. The cart's going to move you, you know? So you could definitely be dealing with this Roadhog while in a better spot and providing more value to your team. Chat adds on, and claim space, it's hard to kill / punish Orisa. Yeah, so especially when your supports are kind of like backing you up and stuff like that, make sure that you're really just holding in space and being obnoxious and hard to kill. It's really difficult to punish Orisa, especially when she has Fortify up. So take advantage of that. Make the enemies uncomfortable. Get in their personal space. Breathe that hot breath straight onto their cheeks. So this bongo isn't necessarily necessary, I guess. There's not really any enemies around for you to really be, like, using this. You could have continued this cleanup and continued to just get these picks without the bongo, because you have such a numbers advantage and such a more organized positional advantage as a team, that you just making sure that you're in the right position to, you know, like, make the enemies uncomfortable would just be enough. To not have to use the bongo, right? Because this Diva is up top, and let's make sure that we have the spectate overlay on so that we can see anybody through walls. But the Diva's up top, the Moira's behind, Soldier's coming through with the Mei, but they're not really congealed. They're all separated. So you have no reason to use this bongo when you're not in a team fight, when you're not disadvantaged, when you're not under any pressure. You could have won the next team fight easier by having it up. You could have boosted your Genji's blade, or boosted Bob, or just won it just with bongo. So I think a little bit more discipline on where you use your ultimate there would be better. I think you also staying on this card again adds more value, because now you have so much space to make up. For both Sigma and Orisa, because they have no movement ability. I mean, Ryan and Zarya as well. But because they have no movement ability, and their projectiles are either limited in range or very, very slow and hard to hit at long distances, it's very important that you're precocious when it comes to where you are. You have to be very, very careful. So all of that space that you had to just make up because you backtracked, while it was important to, you know, help your Ana as much as you can, it was also... Okay, so it's difficult because it's not necessary, because you helped your Ana. Your Ana still died, unfortunately. But you could have aided her with the support of the Genji from cart still, and you then would have had the ability to put more pressure onto these enemies that are currently here. Chat says Ryan Zarya has movement. I mean, they have legs and Ryan has charge. I don't really count charge as movement, because you don't want to use charge to close gaps like this, especially at an angle. Like, you can't turn as Reinhardt. And the rocket jump for Zarya doesn't really count as movement, especially during combat, because you take splash damage for it, so you can't really use it haphazardly. You have to only use it during downtimes. What was it though? Now that you have to close this space, you're allowing them an opportunity to kind of like push onto cart and contest, as well as losing the opportunity to continue to apply pressure to that Soldier who's half health, to pull him out of position. You could have helped your Ana from further ahead, and you didn't have to walk all the way back to get that damage done. If it's a matter of you hitting your shots, then I mean, there's certain ranges at which Orisa loses effectiveness, but at the same time, there is a certain amount of practice that you have to get in with Orisa to be able to be good with her aim. So I mean, being able to apply that pressure from a distance is going to be semi important. It's going to be a small factor. Is this the final VOD for today? Yeah, this is the final one for today. So yeah, bongo would have been really good here. I would again like to see you push forward. There is all of this open space up here. All of this open space. I mean, this Lucio sure is here, but he's not stopping you from... Lucio's never going to stop you from getting here. Especially, you should still have Fortify, correct? There we go. Do you still have Fortify? Okay, it's about to come off cooldown. I'm not sure what you used it for before. So let's go see what you used Fortify there for before. Okay, so I guess this is a Fortify just to stop the Lucio's potential of booping you. Which I'm not gonna fault that, but I think you could be in this ahead space a little bit sooner. Let me get rid of this thing. Chat, I'll respond in 1 second. Let me just get through this point really quick. Okay, well they got through the point. All right. Do you have a Discord? Oh, wait. Is this the final VOD? How do we send them? And to the people, also an Ana combo with Orisa, Fortify, Nano, Fortify. Yeah. Okay, so chat's just kind of offering up like a little tidbit for combos of stuff you could do if you happen to be in comms with the Ana. So you can always, if you really want to like stall out point and become super obnoxious to kill, you can Fortify on point or Fortify somewhere. Then once your Fortify runs out, get nanoed, and then once the nano runs out, you'll have Fortify back. And it's just such a long duration of time where you're just nearly unkillable, especially if you're getting any type of healing or support. I do not have a Discord that people could just freely join. If you're talking about how to send VOD reviews, I haven't had anybody like just submit me a VOD review yet, so that it hasn't been a thing yet. But you can email me, I guess, at coachbot211@gmail.com. Or you could put it in the chat, and I'll write it down. But beyond that, yeah, I don't have any sort of system set up. I coach for my university. I have a console team that I coach for, and this person I had met online, and I offered them coaching. I've just been kind of doing whatever for the most part, and practicing my coaching out a little bit more. It does not look like this, to be clear, when I'm coaching for my university, just because I'm able to kind of like use more resources that I don't have available to me right now. So in transitional stages like this, when there's these, what the heck? When there's these big doors, make sure that you are pushing ahead. I think you're going to push ahead right now, which is good. You want to claim this space before the door is even open. The cart can't move for that large section there. You're poor Ana. Oh, never mind. Your Ana's a legend. Nice rock by your Sigma. That's the other thing too. I think when it comes to kind of like lower ranks, because I know you're in like mid to low gold, it becomes a little bit difficult to develop this, but you really need to trust your off tank and your supports. Your supports have to be able to find the sight lines onto you, and you need to be able to, you know, like play in positions where they could see you a little bit easier. But you have to trust your supports to keep you healed up in certain positions, because there's certain jobs that you have to do. But there's also times where you have to trust your off tank to protect you and to, you know, like negate certain things for you. So what I'll say is that as much as I've been saying you need to move forward, you need to move forward, you need to move forward, the large reason that I'm able to say that is because your off tank and your supports are allowing you to take that space. You're almost always within the armor portion of your health or full health, and your Sigma's almost always hitting the important rocks, shielding you at the right times, or already up in those advanced positionings. So you need to recognize when those opportunities are available and take advantage of them. As I say that, you almost instantly just get evaporated by the soldier. It's almost like this game is out to make me look like a liar. But look, your mercy's residue. Boom, boom, not a liar. That your supports love you. So chat says, I've learned to be self-sufficient and learned how not to be. It depends on the hero and what's happening. Yeah, so there's a certain level of the game when you're solo queuing where you can't depend on your randoms, where you have to do things for yourself. And then there's a certain level of the game where you have to trust your allies to do certain things for you. And I think these things get a little bit easier as you climb in the ranks, because then I think things become a little bit more predictable and understandable as everybody slowly starts to go towards what's optimal. And I've talked about this before. I don't know if this has been a VOD with you or VOD with somebody else, but higher ranked players are going to do what's optimal, which means the number of random occurrences, the number of random things that can happen are going to be limited. So you know that a Master's Ana is almost always going to take the same sight line and heal at the same rank, or heal at the same rate rather. But you don't know what a gold, plat, silver, bronze Ana is going to do. They could be anywhere in the fucking map and it could make sense for them. So it's something that I think is difficult in this rank for sure. But when you start to see it, when you start to recognize it in your game, you have to try to take advantage of it while you can, because that's how those games are going to be even easier to win if you start, you know, like taking advantage of what your team is giving you. No one cares about you, or it could just be me in terms of people in ranked. You know, people in ranked generally don't care. I think the people who play tank and support generally care more, or more likely to care, more prone to care at least. But generally speaking, your DPS do not care about you. Your other tank will not care about you. You do have to find play styles and niches that are, you know, specific to being able to stay alive on your own. But I don't think that type of Overwatch is the type of Overwatch most people enjoy playing in the first place. And when we're there, then we could kind of talk about how you do that. Like if you were to play in a style that was like nobody was offering you resources on this map, then all I would say is that you have to make sure that you're playing from positions where there's a health pack nearby, and playing from positions where you could retreat very easily. And if nobody's supporting you, then you have to make sure that you're pushing the tempo regardless, because if you let up and let them get a full team fight, they're going to roll over you because you're not getting any support as the main tank. And that could be very detrimental. That could be very, very dangerous. If you're the main tank and you're not getting the proper support to be able to protect your teammates, then it's not always your fault. There's things you can do, but the game gets 10 times harder. So I'm just talking about in the instance of this game specifically, what you could have done here given what was going on, giving you specific information. The game is so situational. It can be so difficult at times to really get a full grasp on everything that's going on. Because if you start, well, let's say you played this game, right? And I said, okay, make sure that you're playing on point and pushing the tempo. And then you start playing on point and pushing the tempo, and in the next game, they have Reaper Junkrat. You can't play on point and push the tempo against Reaper Junkrat because they're going to spam you out most of the time. You actually have to either play on point or play further back because there's going to be so much pressure. Unless you have people who need to get in their face. Then, if your teammates need to get in their face and are close range DPS or something like that, then you do need to push the tempo regardless of if you're dying or not, because the other people on your team can't get value if you're not giving them the space to get value, right? It's very, very situational. So all I can tell you about is this game in particular. I do really like your Sigma though. He has been at least as on point as you could expect him to be. So this Roadhog's doing something fishy. I don't know what, but we're just gonna look at this bongo again. It's behind your body right now, but you already used shield and it's not behind anything else. So if your body moves, it's gonna die. I would just still like that to be in better positioning. Like that to be somewhere where they can't break it easily. So you get a little bit overwhelmed there. I think that your first shield was a little bit too early. Hold up, they have a sim that counter double shield. It can counter double shield. Depends on how you deny the sim space and how fast you focus her in the engagement. Good job trying to help your Hanzo, making sure that you get in there as quick as you can once you recognize that he's in danger. Good job clearing the mines or the turrets. I definitely like that. generally, when it comes to things like Reaper, Roadhog ulting, or Soldier tac-vising, what you want to do is you want to hold defense matrix on them while micro-missiling. Don't shoot them because you want to give your team the opportunity to shoot them. When you're being whole hogged, it's very, very difficult to aim. So if you could defense matrix for that short stint, everybody will more than likely be able to focus him down. So that winds up happening a second later, but you take so much damage because and lose so much space because everybody gets pushed around. And this is something that the enemy team can capitalize on it. So you want to just micro missile and then hold defense matrix. Don't worry about shooting them yourself until you've run out of defense matrix. Nice. Unless you see them super low like that guy was, then you could just evaporate them. You should definitely finish the turret in that situation. Somebody else finishes it for you, but there's no harm in finishing it. Let's finish this out first. Let's see what else happens here. I'm really just waiting for this. I'm not just watching. Okay, here we go. So, we're actually going to exit this game and go look at a few things. So, the first thing that I'm going to talk about before we even start on all of the stuff I'm about to show you, the mechanical stuff that I'm about to show you, is just small specific stuff. So, make sure that when you're playing Diva, for more specific matchups, you're defense matrixing the orbs, because the orbs are where Moira is going to get most of her value. So if you're defense matrixing her orbs, you're denying her half of her kit, which is really good. To make sure that you're focusing specific targets. Don't forget that even though Diva does a ton of damage, that your role on the team is to negate threats for your allies and to create space, right? So you can create space in situations like that by making sure that you're focusing on targets that are either easier to kill or threatening to your allies. Or even by just putting yourself in the enemy's back and making them decide whether or not they want to turn around or not. So what we're going to talk about here is bombs and using the boosters in tandem with using the bombs. So it might be easier actually for me to swap into a custom game, but since I have this bomb, I'm going to show you just to start. I'm sure you've seen it before, but if you use your boosters and then hit your ultimate, it'll fly forward like such. And it'll actually it's actually useful in multiple different facets. So I'm actually, let's go into the custom game so we can do this a little faster. I don't have to fucking farm bomb every time. And let's go into Eichenwalde so that you can see what's going on. Settings, presets. No, not presets, maps. None. Where's Eichenwalde? Am I stupid? There it is. Okay, that. Heroes, hero roster. No. General. Spawn with ultimate ready. So you could do this with Diva specifically where you spawn with ultimate ready. And basically remeching counts as spawning in this for some reason. So you'll just come back with your ult immediately. So you'll see if we throw the bomb and then remech, we instantly have bomb again. So let's go on to this last point here, because this is going to be very specific to this point because there's the low ceiling. So in any situations where you can kind of like see a low ceiling, these are some things that you could do. So the first thing that you're going to want to just understand and practice is that you could throw your bomb. Like, not like that. I play on console. Excuse me. So yeah, you're going to want to just get used to hitting the buttons in succession, throwing your bomb, and then, or starting your flight and then throwing your bomb. So you'll notice that from where I am specifically, that the bomb lands nearly perfectly in kind of like the center area and will hit everybody unless you fucking slide it off the chandelier. Sorry. So you're going to want to stand generally on this ledge. How do you... Okay, so this light right here, let's say. Line up with this light. Look at this pillar a little bit towards the outside of the pillar and throw your bomb. And then it'll land basically where the point was at the end of this. So that's going to be the first technique, is just straight up throwing the bomb. The second technique is going to be letting your boosters run for a little bit, right? If you let your boosters run for a little bit, the bomb's not going to be able to go as far. And it'll do kind of just a different animation, basically. You could use this for change of pace. You could use this to kind of like suddenly throw your bomb. Let's say if you were chasing someone and then you wanted to suddenly throw your bomb. Of course, you can't flick that fast on console, but you could do things of a very similar effect. The last thing, which is going to get kind of wonky on this point, is you could fly forward and then just look up and then launch your bomb. Because of the low ceiling, you have to be careful of the booster timer, and you have to be careful at where the chandelier is, right? So if you notice, I flew to about half again, and then I just threw my bomb, and it does this little half, like, lob thing. Sometimes it'll hit the ceiling if you do it a little bit too soon. But these are basically just fundamental bombs. So this is going to be the last one that I show you, where you're just going to look down at the ground, and then just fly and throw it. It'll do that weird kind of sliding animation, but you'll notice that it kind of just changes the perception of the bomb a little. Well, you don't notice that, sorry. But basically the advantage of this is going to be that it throws the enemies off, right? So let's say that you were a Roadhog over here, or the Reaper or the Moira over here. Once the bomb is thrown, all you see is this triangle on your screen that's just arcing in this weird path, right? And you have to understand, based off of that triangle, where the bomb's going to be and what you have to do in order to avoid it. And that extra kind of like work can be a little bit difficult to work around, right? Just will catch a few extra people off guard. It'll let you get more value. The final thing that we'll talk about, I think, I don't know how many times I've said the final thing. I don't even know what is reality. I'm sorry, I talk around myself in circles sometimes. But if you're getting demeched, like if somebody's dealt damage to you, which unfortunately there's nobody here to deal damage to me. But if you get demeched and you see those triangles on your screen, during that animation you can actually hit you can hit your ultimate and it'll still go off. And then you'll be able to get your remech back. So there was an instance where the other Diva was bombing, and you decided to bomb in counter, but you wound up dying to her bomb because you got out of it too quickly, and you couldn't get away. Like, it was just poor timing. So what you could have done instead was just waited for her bomb to demech you, and then use your bomb in response of being demeched. That would have allowed you to get similar value to what you had, as well as come back in mech, you know? What I would suggest largely for Diva is just go into the maps you like and just practice your bombs. That's partially why I was able to just like go to the locations and throw my bombs, because I've spent so much time in these maps just like throwing the bombs around. For me, this is kind of cathartic. But really what you're looking for with your bombs is to clear as much space as possible. So you had a good idea with using it here. It clears all of those high grounds there, those little lip edges, as well as clearing the area immediately around the point. But there's just going to be different things that you're looking for in each kind of like area, depending on how the high ground looks or how corners look, right? So let's go check out a different area that could be a little bit trickier. So we're going to come over here, and we're going to be looking at bombing on this corner here. So you'll notice there's a bunch of high grounds up there and stuff like that, and people can be playing from both the high ground and the low ground. So when you're here, and I believe this is the right angle, you generally want to be throwing your bomb a little bit higher, because it's going to clear both the high grounds and the low grounds. And you just basically want to be aware of these things and aware of these locations. Like, look at this wall, right? If I want to clear both sides of the wall, then I have to make sure that I'm landing it as on the wall as possible. And this is just a practice thing, right? Like I said, go into this game mode, turn on the ability to spawn with ultimate ready, and just throw around the bombs and think about what you're trying to do, what you might try to clear, what areas you want to try to deny the enemies from. That meme, there's a meme, I don't know if you know, where that was a zoning ult, is actually fairly accurate. Most ultimates in this game, at the very minimum, are zoning ultimates, which can be very important for then, like doing follow-up kind of maneuvers and abilities, right? If you back people out of their comfort zones and the locations that they want to hold, then you could potentially open up space for your teammates to do things that they've been waiting to do, that they've been denied from doing, Okay, so looking back at chat, actually I have to scroll. Can you? Oh, I'm not in the fucking replay viewer anymore. I was trying to hit N. Okay, focus the teleporter, blah, blah, blah. Reaper Far. Yeah, make sure that you're eating those big, like, bursty damage characters. Make sure that you're focusing down Sim before she could ramp up damage. Make sure you're focusing turrets and teleporters and stuff like that. Okay, so do you think I can make a group and coach people? I don't know. I mean, you can't do anything but try, right? You can't do anything but try. Everything's just trial and error, and just having a little bit of confidence and a little bit of willingness to listen to other people's opinions and accept where you might be wrong. Okay, so let's go. Where was it? You guys are about to cap. You guys are about to cap. Holy shit. You guys are about to cap for a while. Sorry, I'm having nasal issues. I will be right back.
Ready for battle.
Alright. Hopefully that's a little bit better. Oh, man. Alright, so let's look at the composition again. So we still have the same Sigma as before, except this time we're not running double shield, we're running the Diva. So just make sure that you're denying as much kind of like large abilities as possible as Diva. So you're going to have to eat Helix Rocket and eat Pull and eat Fire Strike. Those are going to be your main priorities. As Diva, you don't want to be eating just raw damage, because although it'll be a nice stat pattern in terms of saying like damage denied or whatever, it's not going to get the most value, right? So Fire Strike is Ryan's biggest way of farming ult. So by denying it, you deny him ult, even if it's not a ton of damage, right? You always want to have your DMs up for these specific things. By denying Pull, you deny the enemies the ability to get like free damage in on your team, or like hitting certain combos and stuff like that. By denying Helix Rocket, you're denying Soldier his biggest finishing ability, right? Like, he can't really kill people effectively without Helix Rocket unless they're super, super out of position. So you definitely want to be trying to deny specific abilities, not just raw damage. So you have long range kind of like sniper type DPS on your team, so they're going to be playing from a bit further back. That means you don't have to play super in the enemy's face, and you can actually, you know, like skirt the edge of the engagement most of the time, just making sure, like I said, to deny those big abilities. Good eat. So you definitely don't want to be flying into these engagements like this, because this leaves you without your boosters for 3 or 4 seconds. The enemies don't notice you, which is good. It's beneficial. But it's definitely going to be a risk that you're taking right here, right? And we don't. This is kind of an unnecessary risk. Generally, what you want to be doing with these mobile heroes is making sure that you get to the nearest high ground and then fall onto the enemy team or fall into some cover near them, and then have your boosters to be able to fly out at a moment's notice. Where you are, you have 4 or 5 seconds from the time that your boosters end again, now you don't have your boosters, and now you've been caught out and you're going to be killed, and your walk back time is going to be, okay, maybe they just won't kill you then. There we go. Thank you, game. But yeah, your walk back time is going to be longer than the enemy Orisa's, and the enemy Orisa actually just got rezzed. So everything you just did was fairly worthless. So you really just want to make sure that you're not putting yourself in those positions where you're like gonna get caught out super easy like that one. I gotta figure out how to get those Discord notifications muted. That'll be my next thing. First is how to get world chat muted for Overwatch. Second is gonna be Discord notifications onto the other screen. So yeah, you really want to be putting yourself into positions where you can just fall in and out of engagements and always have your fly to escape. I don't think you necessarily lose your team that fight there, thankfully, because you guys kind of got rolled over anyway, but I think you definitely didn't contribute to the hold in any way, because you just were so in there and so easy to kill for them. This is the type of engagement I'm talking about. So you force out fortifying, that's great, and you're just out. You don't even necessarily have to go anywhere if you don't want to. You could just like do that again. Okay, so you throw the bomb this time. Nice, nice, nice. You like that. That's a good spacing. A little bit high, but not so high that it was unproductive, you know? It was just, it could have been a little bit lower and maybe gotten the tanks as well. So, in these mid-fights, you really want to be still taking those high grounds and stuff like that and making sure you're scouting where the enemies want to go. So the top of the castle is a very important place to hold because it'll let you see a lot of the second point, and it'll also allow you to rotate very easily. So if you didn't have to fly up here, it'd be a little bit better. Or if you had already flown up here. Thankfully, they seem to be chasing into your backline, and this is slowly falling apart. And just note that as most off tanks, you don't have to actually stay at the front of the engagement. You more so want an off angle to the engagement because you want to put pressure onto the enemy team and force them to make decisions. It's not your job to like gatekeep the point or gatekeep certain locations. That's what the main tank is for. The main tank is made to like hold locations firm, you know? To be able to stay in unwanted spaces for longer than they should. So you've lost the point. I'm not sure where you make this push here. Just try to be aware of, you know, once the objective is captured, just getting into position for the next fight. Because there's nothing you can really do by pushing into the enemy backline there. So I think there's space here that you could be taking advantage of. And that's largely because the enemies, I think, haven't really gotten aggressive yet. So this space right here around the cart, the enemies can kind of like see all of this space outside of it. But right here, I think you can contest cart a little bit for your team and just waste a little bit of the enemy's time, because they would have to actively push around the cart to be able to get you if you're here. And it's just not it's not, they're not doing it yet, so there's no reason that you shouldn't just waste their time. Like, they're just getting free value because you just, like, you and the Sigma keep backing up. I like that bomb. I like that throw. I like the aggro engagement after. I think your mechanics on Diva are a little bit shaky, so just maybe see if you can polish them up by spending some time in the practice range, or spending some time in some aim trainers, or spending some time just really focusing on how your sensitivity works and how you can maybe, you know, like predict enemy movement patterns better or something like that. I don't know. No, but you could definitely spend more time just like thinking to yourself, like, okay, why did I miss there? Did I maybe overcompensate by turning to the left and to the right? Does that mean my sensitivity is too high, or is that because I'm doing too much? If you ever see your Mercy flying behind you like that, just make sure you defense matrix her, because somebody could very easily just hit her on her way out. And that'll make your supports very, very angry. I almost thought this Sim shield was your shield for a second. I would have stayed, so can we go back like small seconds? A little bit more. Okay. This might be a little bit further than I wanted, but we'll make do. So this is really what I'm talking about on this point is playing around the objective and making sure that you're providing value to the fight as well as providing value to the objective. So this Ryan decides to forget about you afterwards. You push up, and then right here. So if you look at the like, and you can't see it from your perspective, of course, but the enemy sightlines kind of can't really see you properly. The only real threat there is the Orisa. The Lucio could hunt you down, but he doesn't really have any tools to finish you effectively. Like, he has combos to do it, but he's not going to be the one who really, like, you have to be afraid of. So when you push up forward, you push in front of this Orisa with Bongo out, and she could very well finish you. You could have just stayed in front of Cart right here and just shot at that Rhine and just chilled for a second. But now they kind of know you're here, or maybe they didn't. You know what? Maybe they just didn't. But you could have contested Cart a little bit better. Or not a little bit better, but a little bit easier by just hiding in that small, like, little cradle where they couldn't easily see you. Orisa gives up. You love to see it. I mean, you hate to see it. I think this bomb is similar to the Bongo earlier. You get 2 picks, it's good, but you already had the numbers advantage. You already had the defensive hold. The enemies were already out in the open. I think you could have won that fight without it, just by kind of like polishing up on your positioning and making sure that you're punishing the right targets at the right time. So you just definitely want to be going for those squishy targets with stable hitboxes who don't have escape. So Soldier has an escape. Symmetra doesn't. Unless she's on top of her teleporter, she doesn't have an escape. Junkrat doesn't have an escape as long as you eat his concussion mine. Mercy has an escape. The Reinhardt doesn't have an escape as long as you just get on, like, you have 2 people on either side of him, because then he can't shield them both, right? So I think you could clean up these fights by employing these small tactics. So going into these last fights, you definitely want to try to focus on preventing any ultimates that could be coming out. Just try to think about what you might need to deny. Please defense matrix your mercies while they're rezzing. Alright, so all in all, a win is a win. I think you did decent. I won't really say good. I think you had some great bombs, especially on the last point. I think you got a 2K almost every bomb, towards the back half of that. But I think there's a lot of times where you're playing, too aggressively, where you're just flying into the enemy team and you're just basically giving them a free pick because you're abandoning yourself to the middle of the enemy team with no escape. And you need to just be wary of how you can get in and out of these engagements without just throwing yourself in there. You don't really use high ground too often. The one time you did, I thought you got good value without sacrificing too much. You know, it was just a good clean in and out on that Orisa on the start of second point. But there's a lot of spaces that have sort of like high grounds or off angles that you could be using, not necessarily third point, but definitely first and second that you could be using, that will allow you to get more value without putting you in risky situations. It's also important to deny high ground from other people, so being there early is a good way to be able to deny it, right? You don't have to spend resources contesting into someone, right? Like if you've already flown up there, by the time somebody's pushing into you, you'll have your flyback, so you have plenty of options for what you could possibly do. Make sure that you're eating high value things. I saw you eating the fire strike, so that was good. I saw you eating a few pulls, a few helix rockets, but I think that was kind of like a 50-50 like accident, sometimes on purpose. Make sure that you're defense matrixing your allies when they're in vulnerable positioning, especially Mercy. The supports will get big mad at you if you don't help them when they're trying to help you. So a Mercy rezzing, like, she's doing a good thing for your team, you know, like defense matrix her, also do a good thing for your team as well. Let that res actually go through and let her get back to safety. You seem to know how to throw your bombs. I would like to see you throw your bomb pretty much all the time. I don't think there's any reason that you should just place a bomb. Even if you're just throwing it straight up, it'll kind of add a variable that the enemies have to take into account. So it just adds a layer to your gameplay. It adds a layer of complexity that the enemy team has to try to figure out. Make sure that you're not using your ults in fights that could be won without them. So if you have numbers advantages, if you have, if the enemy is already staggered out, not really cohesive, you don't need to press the Y button that easily. It's something that can win you fights if you learn how to use it effectively, and it's something that can lose you fights if you use it too greedily or aggressively. So I'm going to put this up on the YouTubes. I'm going to probably be doing these a lot more now, because I have my monitor back. I haven't had my monitor about a week and a half. But yeah, that's going to be all for now and for today. And I'll be up tomorrow if this hurricane doesn't absolutely destroy my internet, or at least my power. Deuce.